is Gene Chui.
Oh, hi. Yes, as Joe
Ah,
says, my name's Gene
hopefully
Chui.
you heard that.
Can people hear you? Yep. As Joe says, my name's Gene
Just
Chu.
about. I think you dropped out there for a second.
Oh, okay. My name's Gene Chu, and I work at Ketchum PR. I specifically sit on our European team, handling new business and marketing for Ketchum itself. And I support across the board on our corporate brand and healthcare practices on any new biz client needs as well.
And I suppose today the ebook is all about kind of letting people know what public relations is all about in the various different sections of it. So the thing about PR though is it's very difficult to define. There's so many arguments about it. So before we get into what is face to face, what is public relations to you?
Um, yeah, no, I completely appreciate that. It's quite a vague industry, and it's one of those that you can ask a million people, and you probably get a million different answers. But I think fundamentally, it's still about managing relationships with a third-party audience. You know, whether you're working for a politician, a brand, any sort of charity organization, it's about helping them to communicate what they want to say to, I suppose, their publics, internal audiences, just someone else, and helping them to manage that relationship and keeping it smooth, hopefully.
Yeah. I suppose one of there's so many ways to communicate in this day and age. Before it was
Hmm.
just a case of you'd write a letter, you would make a phone call, and it would be a pretty expensive one if you're dealing with Europe.
Of
Um,
course.
but now you've got so much, you know, technology. So where does actual face-to-face fit in when you're dealing with a client?
I think although there's so much technology, there's still a huge place for face to face. I feel it's really important, and just us as humans, we like that human interaction. I think there's an argument for where face to face falls in terms of spectrum of your relationship that you have with said person. I think in particular with clients, it really helps that trust. When you can see someone in front of you, see their body language, how they present themselves, how they speak to you, and that interaction between the two of you, that's where the relationship really moves on a level. I think that's where you can really develop it from a supplier slash PR to a client relationship, to one of friendship, of one that is a trusting partnership, of one where they're willing to reveal extra details that will help you and them create the campaign or hit your end objective.
I mean, how important is it to you? Yeah, I mean, how much emphasis do you place on meeting the client and getting to know them as people rather than just business to client relationship?
Oh, huge amounts, and not just with clients, but all sorts of other audiences, media, for example, even production teams we use, third-party suppliers. I even like to go out and meet people who might just print our marketing materials. It's that, we all have it. We have friends, and our friends will always do us a favor and help us out, and you'll find it a lot easier to get on with. And even when, say, in particular with a client, if there's a dodgy situation or maybe something's not gone quite right, it's always a lot easier to pick up the phone and speak to someone who you've become more friendly with and talk it out, rather than having to go to someone who's more formal and you've only got that PR to client relationship. And then that's when it gets a bit more difficult, and you can sometimes see things like a bit of a blame game.
Mm, mm. So obviously, if you've actually got somebody to hold accountable, it's a little bit more transparent, a little bit more friendly, as you say. But in a more general sense, what do you think, as somebody within the industry, of the reputation that public relations has actually got? Because for my money, we're seen as some sort of spin doctors and
Hmm.
manipulators of the truth.
Yeah, I suppose this is where the debate around transparency is coming more and more into our industry. Yes, we are seen as spin doctors, and in the past, that's been part of the job role. I think the audiences out there are getting a lot more savvy. Everyone's a little more clever, and they don't just believe what message that we spin out to them. So it's about gaining that trust through showing them what we do, what we've actually changed, rather than just telling them. They need those real life examples of that. I actually don't think it's really been helped by a barrage of new TV programs that have been coming out, such things like Babylon, the recent Danny Boyle one, which was about communications in the police force.
Mm,
There's one at the moment, W1A, about the BBC. If we go as far back as In the Thick of It, or even recently Veep, which was about the vice president, and how it's almost made a joke of how we are these spin doctors and how we are always constantly trying to hide the truth. Obviously, with transparency, we only want to go so far because we still need a bit of that surprise or wow factor when it comes to that end product. If our audiences know everything that's going on, then there's almost no need for that big drop towards the end.
mm. I mean, some people watching this will say, "Oh, public relations are liars and all that," and even to a certain extent, journalists are getting that flack as well now. But
Hmm.
where for you is the line between, you know, a friendly nudge, say a manipulation if you want, um, and outright deceit? Because obviously we have to kind of convince the person to go with us, so we use different techniques and
Yeah,
tricks.
I don't think it's manipulation or outright deceit. I think it's more about helping people understand um, a truth, really. We know just from day to day conversation or a text message, so many things can be misinterpreted in so many different ways. Just from someone's tone, maybe their behavior, the way they say something, they may not necessarily mean it in the way that it's taken. So more and more it's about helping people understand what we really mean and what we offering to bring, or what is that commitment we're making, what is it that, say, a politician is stating that they're going to change. It's helping people understand what we mean rather than just throwing them a line and saying you will believe this.
So where do you see the profession as a whole going in the future?
In what respects? I think,
Do
if
you
anything,
see?
it,
Yeah.
it I think it's growing in importance. I think more so than ever before are we being pushed out into the limelight. I think before we were always like these guys in the back room that no one ever saw and no one ever heard about. But with social media, with transparency, with the way people consume media, and how social media has geared people to be more not nosy but inquisitive, and they're allowed to find out information: who did that, who said what did that campaign, how did that campaign really come about, has pushed us to the fore. So I think we're growing in importance. I think more and more people are looking to PR now, especially when I think the advertising industry has been really hit by a credibility issue. People see that as pure spin. People see a sports advert, a sports drink advert, say, which says this will make you run faster. I think a lot of people now think, no, it won't really. Me being Usain Bolt might make me run faster, but wearing those shoes might not.
I always think it would be so great if we could all wear Usain Bolt shoes and go a lot faster. Same with
Exactly.
same with Michael Jordan shoes, I think. But
Yeah, jump higher.
I don't think anyone will be doing any slam dunks anytime soon. But it's interesting you mention marketing, because on my course
Hmm.
we also work with marketing as well on the MA.
Yeah.
But what for you is the key difference between PR and marketing, or do you think they're part of the same community, the same sort of school?
Uh, th- Definitely part of the same school. If anything, they're would say they're relatives, close sister and brother relationship, if you like. I think PR, where it's more about controlling a message and making sure that we're saying the right things about ourselves. Marketing, it probably has more of an end product in terms of sales to it. Its purpose is to convince people to buy, I feel, more so than PR is.
Hmm. So you'd say ours is more about getting the message out to the people, and theirs is more about return on investment.
Yes, of sorts. I think, yeah, marketing is specifically driven by that ROI, that sales value, whereas PR can be driven by more an intangible one. It could be a change in attitude, it could be a change in emotion. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sale, whereas I think marketing is more focused that way. Obviously, PR through its messaging then plugs into marketing because it's like, this is us as a company or as a brand, as a product, as a politician say, this is what we want to say. And then marketing almost takes that and looks at the way and how it can tangibly transfer that message into an end product or a return.
So obviously today we've set up this meeting with various communications, Twitter being foremost among them.
Mhm.
Do
Sorry, you've cut
you
out there.
think that the
Sorry,
so
you've cut out then. If you could repeat yourself.
sorry, I'm saying, yeah, obviously we've set up this meeting through various different means, through like Twitter and email. Um, how much would you say things like Facebook, Twitter, even email
Mhm.
have hindered the personal, the personal touch of public relations, or even in life in general? And where do you see face-to-face going in the future?
Yeah.
That's a
That's a
big
big
question.
question.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think hindrance is the right word. I think because of the way we are and the busy lifestyles we lead, I think it's a convenience, which is why we use things such as email, Facebook, and Twitter. It's not something I've got someone in front of me I have to immediately respond to necessarily. But I do think it's allowed us to go broader and connect with a wider group of people. So for that, that's great because sometimes, face to face, you're quite limited. It's either the people in front of you in the room with you, or you can't speak to them. But again, I just think you don't get that trusting
Mm.
relationship that you get with a face-to-face meeting. I think even from a personal point of view, a lot of my media relations, a lot of my client relations, the best ones have been built on those that I've regularly had face-to-face meetings with, whether it be formal or informal in a social scenario or a business scenario. They both actually have quite similar outcomes. And then there are still massive trade shows and events. We only have to look at the recent South by Southwest and say the Mobile World Congress earlier in the year. Fashion Week is another good
I
example.
think we've lost.
And sorry, have you still got me?
Are you still there?
Yep, yep. Can you hear me?
The line, uh,
Hello?
age,
Hello?
just just about.
Okay,
I can hear you now.
you
Okay.
can hear me now, yeah. Dodgy Wi-Fi. Yes,
Oh yeah.
where was that? I was saying, with big trade shows and events like a South by Southwest or a Mobile World Congress or Fashion Week, as another example, we can see how face-to-face business is still being done, face-to-face relationships are still being built, and actually something like a LinkedIn or Twitter might help us to connect with people, but ultimately it's those face-to-face meetings you have that really push it on. It probably allows for the follow-up conversation afterwards, that demonstration and that shared excitement of a new technology that you otherwise might not be able to put across in an email on a tweet.
I just as the ebook today is all
Mhm.
about transparency and letting people know what we do. If there's one thing you could leave the people with, reading the book, seeing this for the first time, what would you say the most important thing about PR is?
Be yourself. Genuinely be yourself. People can see through a false identity, a facade, and then that automatically creates a barrier from them being easily able to trust you. It's in the title, public relations. It's about relations and those relationships. And again, why we're moving to a more transparent industry is to build that trust.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, cool.